Okay, hi everyone, it's Lisa again, and I wanted to just show some examples of trees on campus. If this were a normal year, we'd be going into the woods with the 101A students, showing people what the trees look like in their natural habitat, but it's not. So we'll have to just make do with this video instead for the folks who haven't been to the island and aren't really familiar with the vegetation here. Now, this is a standard textbook that we've been using for looking at the trees in coastal BC and other kinds of undergrowth as well. And they use it in biology as well. So it's a pretty good source, and it's got lots of pictures in it. And you can see here that the tree section is relatively short, and compared with what Phil was talking about in class the other day with tropical rainforests and like literally hundreds of species per hectare, and we just don't have that in the way of massive numbers of tree species here on the island, and partly because it is an island, and we'll talk about that in class. But there are some fairly important trees living here that I'd like to talk about. Now, you might have seen the earlier campus video where I talked about the avenue of oaks, and I'll just turn and show these oaks in the distance here. They're a special type of oak that has these little pointy lobes on the leaves, and this is kind of what the grouping of oak trees called like red or black oaks, depending on where you are in the world. They tend to have that kind of shape to their leaves, but this is different. I'm just going to have a look at some of the leaves here on this Garry Oak. You can see here by comparison, Garry Oak leaves are more rounded. They got these kind of rounded lobes on them. They don't look quite like this imported variety of oak leaf here. So these are a type of white oak. There are other types of oaks with this similar configuration, like the English white oak, but this is the one that's native to this part of the world, called the Oregon white oak in the States, I believe, but we call it the Garry Oak. Quercus garryana is the Latin name for it. And so it's a really impressive tree. They can get to be quite old. You can see they often do have these multiple stems at the trunk and very distinctive horizontal, almost branches that stretch way out. So the trees are very impressive when you see them. They're often standing in these kind of semi-open woodland or grassland environments. And you can see there are a few of them here on campus. And we'll look at some more in a habitat on Mount Ptolemy fairly soon. But I wanted to just show that these are a really major species that lives here on the South Island. So, walking a little bit further along towards the biology building, I'm heading for that kind of rusty trunk tree ahead of us. And this is a different kind of tree that you just don't find elsewhere in the country. You can see here as we get closer, yeah, it looks like a broadleaf type tree, and it is, but it's unusual because it's an evergreen. The leaves don't all fall off at the same time in the fall. They stay on in the winter. Arbutus trees. This is a species here. Kind of different because you can look at the bark here, and for the people who are outside of BC, notice it's a really nice combination of colors here. The bark kind of peels off periodically to just show new growth underneath it here. And it's a really interesting tree because it's got a lot of magical properties according to the First Nations in the area. So it's an important part of their culture as well. And the flowers apparently are good for the hummingbirds, help keep them alive during other times of the year, and also the sap I hear can be drunk because it's got sugar in it. So there's an interesting little association between this tree and hummingbirds, which are a really special bird in this area. Anyways, you can see some very impressive colors on the trunk here. Apparently the wood is quite hard and difficult to carve. Okay, so the other tree I wanted to talk about in this area is the Douglas fir, and of course you've already heard about that from Dr. Dearden's lectures, but here's an example. You can see the newer growth for this year on the leaves here, or the needles. You can see these new little sections here on the oh, there's a hello little birds. Anyway, you can see the needles here, and it's they're nice because they're not like spruce trees, which are kind of bristly. These are a little bit softer, and we can tell looking at the underside of the Douglas fir, they've got these little stripes, whitish stripes on the underside of the needles here. And also the cones are very distinctive. You can see here, and my old forestry instructor used to talk about this, the little animal, like a squirrel, diving into the cone here. You know, this little fringe here. You've got, like two little legs and a tail. You know, and they have this kind of shaggy look to them, these cones, from a distance, which makes them very easy to spot. So here we have this very nice, impressive Douglas fir specimen, and again, Dr. Dearden was talking about how tall they can get and how important they are, you know, in the coastal ecosystem. So we're going to head into Mystic Vale now to look at some trees that are kind of more of a closed canopy kind of forest.